So I'm Mindy Danavaro, and I'm the Executive Director of the Marshall Foundation for Community Health. We're the fundraising arm of Marshall, and we're so pleased that you could be here today. We've brought Laura out a few times, and every time I hear her, I learn something new. Laura Wayman, a professional dementia care consultant, holds an Associate's in Art degree in gerontology and is a certified social services designee. The CEO of the Dementia Whisperers, Laura has more than a decade of experience with and a strong dedication to quality aging, and she is a sought-after speaker, as we know, and on dementia and issues of aging. I also want to recognize Bill Faulkner. Really, this was his brainchild. He gave us the funding to make this possible, and I and our community are indebted to him because this is happening because of his kindness and his generosity. So this is all funded through philanthropy. His sister had Lewy body dementia, and he had someone that helped him on this journey. And so he didn't want anyone else to suffer or anyone else to lack the resources they needed to help themselves and their loved ones. So we've been putting these seminars on once or twice a year. We've done training for the staff at Marshall, and we are launching Dementia Navigator to help. So we have a resource within our community that can help anyone that has a loved one experiencing dementia symptoms, or they themselves are curious, like, what is happening with me? I'm going to turn it over to Laura. Thank you all for being here. She is going to do a presentation, and then she'll be fielding questions. And we're always here to help with anything you need. Marshall is here. We are the premier provider of care and services in El Dorado County. So I hope that you all choose Marshall for your care.
All right, yay. I have wires everywhere and microphones, and so I'm trying to figure it out as we go. So welcome everyone. I am so glad that you all came this morning to talk about everybody's favorite subject, dementia. No. Well, today I'm going to change your perception about what dementia actually is, and I'm going to take you on a journey so that we can learn to better connect, communicate, and engage with anyone who has any level of dementia symptoms. And why in the world do we need to worry about this? Because the statistics are startling. What research is telling us is that when we reach the wonderful age of 65 or older, which is what a blessing, right? When we reach the wonderful age of 65 or older, we have a 50% chance of having some cause of dementia symptoms. And you know what? I travel all over the country, and I think that percentage is a little bit low. I go into assisted living, independent living, dementia care communities, senior centers. I train first responders. I train entire communities. And when I'm training staff in independent and assisted living, not dementia care, but independent and assisted living communities, and they might have staff of 60 or 70 or 80 in these larger communities. I ask the staff in assisted living, what percentage of those in assisted living that live here with you, what percentage of your residents, not in dementia care yet, what percentage have some dementia symptoms? And it's pretty surprising because all over the country, I hear between 80 and 90%. And think about out in our community. If there's those that have gathered to get assistance in assisted living, how many out in our local communities are desperately trying to care for loved ones in the home who have these dementia symptoms? And then they're going to the medical profession, who we're going to talk about today, who aren't really equipped to help us with these dementia symptoms because they need to become dementia aware as well. Okay, so what is the antidote for this massive dementia denial? It's becoming aware. What we're going to talk about today. So I'm going to ask you a question because I'm going to bust some myths today about dementia. When I say the word dementia, what's the first thing that you've been taught that comes to your mind? Forgetfulness, memory loss, yes. Because we've been taught to look for memory loss, and I'm going to surprise you today because dementia is not about memory loss. That's one of our roadblocks today. So what is it? I'm going to make you dementia experts today. Are you ready? Here we go. Okay, let's start because I've had the opportunity to be in a caregiver's shoes. I've had the opportunity as a professional to be an executive director over dementia care and assisted living. I've had the opportunity to work with hundreds of family caregivers and train professional caregivers from all different venues. So we're going to start with the family caregiver. Many of you here, let's just take a little quick survey. How many of you are caring for a loved one who has dementia symptoms? Okay, over half of you. How many are professionals that care for more than one who has dementia symptoms or support caregivers? Okay, there's a handful here too. Okay, so let's start with these family caregivers. How does it feel to begin to see your loved one dealing with progressive loss? How does that feel to watch them struggle with executive brain function loss? How's that feel? Shocking. Absolutely. What else? Sad. It's absolutely devastating. Don't you agree? And afraid. And there's all this fear. And are you frustrated with the lack of resources? Yes, of course. All right. So it is, you say it is a life-changing event. You came to this fork in the road, dementia, reared up. Now you are on this dementia care journey. So I want to start by telling you a story. Many, many, many years ago, when Peggy was only 17, she was a very, very shy girl. And Peggy lived in this farming community surrounded by farmers and ranchers and their families. And once a month, Peggy's community would get together and have a good old-fashioned square dance. It was really the only time that they could all get together because they worked from sunrise to sunset. And so they could bring their families together and have this community event, this good old-fashioned square dance, potluck, hoedown. Everybody looked forward to this once-a-month event, except for Peggy. She was a very shy 17-year-old, and she wanted to stay at home and read a book. She was very introverted. She didn't want to come out and join all this hubbub. But on this particular night of this dance, Peggy's girlfriends decided she was a young, vibrant, beautiful 17-year-old. She needed to get out and have some fun. So they got Peggy all gussied up, and they pushed her into the square dance hall that night. And there happened to be a guest square dance caller there, a young man by the name of Jack. Now, Peggy had never met Jack before, but when she got pushed into that square dance hall, She looked across to the back of the square dance hall where Jack was standing, getting ready to call the dance, and she saw Jack, and she turned to her girlfriends and said, "Oh my goodness, that man's so handsome. I'm going to marry that man." And they laughed at her and said, "You're too shy. You're not even going to go introduce yourself." But Peggy marched up and introduced herself to Jack, and she was seen flirting and talking with him for the whole evening. And before the end of that square dance that night, Jack asked Peggy out on their first date. They began to date over the next year. They fell madly in love. So on Peggy's 18th birthday, Jack and Peggy eloped. Now this started the journey of a long, magical, married life together. In the first 10 years of Jack and Peggy's life, Peggy had 5 healthy babies. Boom, boom, boom. Now, she found that she so loved caring for babies and children. She loved it so much, she found she was a true caregiver at heart. And she wanted to help other children, so she began to invite foster children into her home. And before it was all said and done, she not only successfully raised her own 5 healthy biological babies to young adults, she helped to raise over 20 foster children along this life journey as well. And every one of those foster children had special care needs. And Peggy could always find a way to help them no matter what their needs were. It just was her calling. Yes, she was successful raising her own 5 biological healthy children. Yes, she successfully raised all of these 20 foster children to young adulthood. And during that time, Jack and Peggy were starting to talk about and plan and get ready for the retirement dream lifestyle that they talked about all throughout their married life. So when that last adult child finally was launched off into their own life, Jack and Peggy were empty nesters. They sold their house, bought an RV, and began to travel all over the United States. This is what they had dreamed about, what they had talked about. However, by the time they got all those kids raised, they were up there in years. So it wasn't long after they began living this life that they had talked about that Jack's health began to fail. At first, it was macular degeneration, and so the driving fell on Peggy, but also along the way, Jack began to show signs and symptoms of dementia. Peggy was very concerned because this was progressive. She had seen many of her friends dealing with parents or dealing with spouses or someone in their life who had a progressive cause, loss of executive brain function, showing in dementia symptoms. So as Jack continued to show more and more of these signs, Peggy gathered him up, took him to their family physician, and they both received the devastating diagnosis that Jack indeed had Alzheimer's as the cause of his dementia symptoms. Peggy knew there was no cure. She knew that there was no therapy, no treatment, that he was going to continue to get worse over time. And so she also recognized that she could not give him good, sensitive, competent dementia care, meet his needs on the road. So they had to give up that dream. They sold their little house on wheels and bought a house in a small little retirement village next to some friends of theirs who also were retired. And Peggy stepped back into that role of being a caregiver full-time, this time for her beloved Jack. And you know, at first she was doing okay. At first, everything was going all right. She was managing, but Jack continued to decline. And as Peggy began to struggle, she looked around and realized, oh my gosh, we made a mistake here. we isolated ourselves from family. Now we're long distance from any family that could come and help her, because at the time when they set this up, she felt she could handle this all by herself. She took care of all those kids, right? And now she's long distance from any family that could help her, and there's no professional help in this little town. There's no in-home care. There's no Marshall Med Center who have a dementia navigator. There's no resources here. She's on her own. And if she does manage to get Jack to the doctor, which he resists care in so many ways, if she does manage him to get to the doctor comes in for 10 minutes, listens to his heart, checks his blood pressure, says, yep, he's got dementia, and sends her home. He doesn't have anything. Not even any resources at that time. So Peggy is really beginning to be concerned. And she looks around and decides, well, I'm in this. I'm here. What can I do? So she decides she's going to reach out to her family for support. She decides, even though they're long distance, she can start reaching out on the phone and get some emotional support. So she begins to have phone calls with her family members, and quite honestly, they're shocked. What? Mom's having trouble? These are young adults in the prime of their life who watched her take care of everything without blinking an eye as they were growing up. And these young people are not around anybody with dementia symptoms. They have no idea what real life dementia care is all about. Even if they come to visit, Peggy's covering for Jack the whole time they're visiting. And he's able to process what I call the hostess facade. So for a short amount of time, he is okay. I'm fine. And he can process just for that short amount of time to look fairly normal. So they didn't realize this was going on. But then Peggy begins to describe what's really happening. She begins to describe these dementia symptoms that are not about memory loss, but a lot about loss of executive function. For example, now Jack is wandering. So she can't take her eyes off of him for a minute, or he's out the door and down the road. She even has to call the police a couple times and have them go fetch him and bring him home. She's not sleeping at night because Jack is up and down and up and down. So she's literally having to sleep with one eye open because he needs constant surveillance, and she's exhausted. And his brain has been so ravaged by Alzheimer's disease that sometimes when Peggy enters the room, he can no longer process or recognize who she is. So he thinks a stranger's entered their home and resists her care. As she's explaining this to the family, they go, oh my gosh, you need help in here. What are we going to do? How can we get you help? And she says, well, there isn't professional help here. There isn't. And all of my neighbors are older. They can't really help me. They have issues of their own. So the family would say, well, we'll help you. And Peggy would resist their care. She would resist their help. She would say, oh, no. I'll alert you if it gets beyond my ability. Then one night, Peggy was home alone with Jack. She had made a dinner for him, as she always did. But as Peggy began to sit down to have dinner with Jack, Peggy suffered a massive heart attack. Now, Jack's dementia was so far advanced, he did not recognize that she needed emergency help. In his confusion, he eventually wandered out the door and said something to a passing neighbor, very concerning, that Peggy was tired, she was sleeping on the floor. So by the time help arrived, it was too late. Peggy was gone. Peggy was my mother. That's why I'm standing in front of you today. I was shocked. I have a degree in gerontology. I didn't learn this in gerontology. I was not familiar with the statistics that say 68% of the time, especially a same-age spouse, if they are giving dementia care and do not ask for help, over 68% of the time, they get sick and go first. It is the ultimate toll. It is the impact of dementia care. We must become more supportive of these caregivers. They cannot do it alone. Do you all need more support? Absolutely. So today, I'm going to share with you information that I believe would have saved my mother's life. The information I've gathered over the last 20 years, looking at this through the eyes of a professional, through the eyes of that daughter, caregiver, through the eyes of you all. What information do you need to better engage and communicate and understand what is actually happening in that person's brain? So are you ready? Let's go on this journey together because I know how helpful this is. I help hundreds and hundreds of people and how important it is to really understand what dementia is. First of all, you cannot have dementia. Dementia is not a diagnosis. Dementia is a list of symptoms. And symptoms are our body's way of telling us something is wrong. For example, every one of you in here at one time or another has had the symptom of pain, right? So let's just say that you fall and you have pain in your shoulder. Pain is a symptom telling you something's wrong with your shoulder. You have an injury. So what would you do? Of course, you would have the expectation that you should go to your physician. So you want to call him up and you say, I've got pain in my shoulder. I had this fall. You call your doctor's office. You say, I need to come see the doctor right away. I think maybe it's a serious injury. I've got to come in. And so your doctor's office says, come right in. Isn't that funny? A lot of times, what do they say to us? Well, we can see you December. Go to the ER. Well, let's imagine, in a perfect world, that your doctor's office says, come right in. So your expectation is you're going to be in front of your doctor and you're going to describe the symptom to them. And your expectation is the doctor is then going to run the proper tests, whatever those are, to figure out what is causing the pain. That's what you want from the doctor, right? So say you're standing in front of the doctor and you describe the symptom. Oh man, it hurts when I move my arm this way or that way and it's swollen, and you're describing the symptom of pain. And your expectations, doctor's going to take the next step. But instead, the doctor listens to you describe the symptom of pain and then says, yes, you have pain. Says pain is the diagnosis. Is pain the diagnosis? No, pain's a symptom. What's the diagnosis? You've got a hurt shoulder. Maybe it's broken. Maybe you have a torn rotator cuff. Maybe, that's what you want your doctor to find out. Why? So he can treat it. Okay, so tell me if this has happened to you as a dementia care caregiver. You bring your loved one to the doctor. You describe the symptoms you're seeing. What does the doctor say to you? He's got dementia. He can't have dementia. That's not a diagnosis. So what I'm telling you is dementia is the symptoms that's telling us that your loved one, the person you're caring for, the individuals that you're caring for your professional, something has gotten into their brain, which is the cause. And there's over 100 different causes. Okay? So that makes it complicated for the medical community, right? They can't run a blood test and find out what exactly is causing these problems. Because dementia is not that illness or disease or stroke or traumatic brain injury that's causing the dementia symptoms. The symptoms are telling us that's what's going on in your brain. There's something going on in there that's robbing that person of executive brain function, and these symptoms have this deteriorating effect on how that individual acts, how they communicate, how they engage in life. Nowhere on there does it say anything about memory loss. It's not about memory loss, but I'm going to show you why we think that, why it looks like that, but I'm also going to show you why we have to get past that because it's not helping us to better understand what's going on. Okay, so dementia symptoms must have a cause, and let me tell you, aging is not a cause. I have family members who come to me and they say, well, we brought Dad in because he had this symptom of loss of balance and coordination, and he was falling, which is a common dementia symptom, or he was having difficulty with good judgment or speaking, common dementia symptoms that often go unrecognized. We explained that to the physician, and that physician just said, oh, he's just getting older. Getting older does not cause this. You have to have one of these causes. Yes, it's difficult to get to the cause. Yes. But we're going to talk about how we connect no matter what the cause. And we're going to start really opening our eyes to these often unrecognized symptoms that happen many years before they're often recognized because we as a society need to be dementia aware. So there's over 100 different causes. Of course, we talk about Alzheimer's all the time because that is the leading cause. But there's vascular dementia symptoms, a stroke, an aneurysm. There's Lewy body disease. There's Parkinson's disease. There's frontotemporal disease. But each one of these diseases, although they're causing loss in the brain, they attack different parts of the brain. So every single disease, illness, event will cause different kinds of dementia symptoms. So that's why if you've met one person with dementia symptoms, you've only met one person with dementia symptoms. We have to customize our care approach. We have to customize our medical approach to the differences in each individual. Absolutely, this is so important. Okay, so you can have degenerative neurological diseases that cause this loss. You can have a traumatic brain injury that can suddenly cause these kinds of dementia symptoms. And that traumatic brain injury will cause immediate loss, whereas these other progressive neurological diseases can cause progressive loss over time. And there's vascular disorders, stroke. There's long-time alcohol or drug abuse. And we're going to see more of this because there's more drug abuse going on. So we're going to see this next generation experiencing this progressive loss of executive brain function, this precious information that they're losing because of this long-time alcohol and drug abuse. So there's so many opportunities, unfortunately, for us to have this experience in life. So let me talk about Viking Joe, because this is different. Viking Joe, in this picture, he was one of the biggest Viking football fans ever. He never missed a game. He was an optician in that state where the Vikings play. He lived nearby to the stadium, would go to every game. Now, he lived in a little small town nearby, and he, at 93, right there, he would never miss a game. He also had parties all the time after the football game, whether they won or lost. Everybody went to Viking Joe. You could even look him up on the internet. He was famous. Now, at 93, as an optician, every weekday morning, Viking Joe would get up, put on his suit, shave, shower, get ready to go to work, drive himself to work. 93 years old. Still working as an optician. One morning, he lived 2 doors down from his daughter Karen, his grown daughter Karen. One morning, Karen's having coffee. She had watched her dad get in his car and drive off to work. She got a call from the highway patrol. Your dad's been in a horrible accident. It's been a horrible car accident. He's in the emergency room. Karen jumps in the car. Oh my gosh. Thinking that she's going to get to the emergency room, he's going to be this mangled, severely injured 93-year-old. She gets there, and Joe's sitting at the end of the emergency room bed, swinging his feet, flirting with the nurses. Looks perfectly normal. But he has a huge bump on his head and some stitches. They run some tests, keep him there for a couple hours, send him home with Karen saying, I want you to observe him for 48 hours. He did bump his head pretty well, but he seems perfectly normal. Within a few hours after Karen gets him home, he begins to decline. Serious decline. He falls every time he tries to stand up. She can't keep him on his feet. He stops being able to complete a sentence or understand what she's saying to him. He is completely confused about where he is, what happened. So she calls the hospital back up. They run some more tests. They can't see any serious injury. They just say, okay, well, he just needs some time to recover. She waits a week. He gets progressively worse. OT comes by. Occupational therapists, they come by. They bring a box. In the box is a razor, shaving cream, toothpaste, toothbrush, washcloth, bar soap. They hand that to Joe, and he's very, very confused. They hand that to Joe, say to Joe, what would you use out of this box to wash your face? This was a week later. He's very confused. He looks in the box. Joe, what would you use to wash your face? He pulls out the razor. Karen knew in that moment their entire life had changed. He went from that day before the accident to having this quality of life, working, flirting with cheerleaders, to now, 5 years later, he needs absolutely full care. He cannot stay on his feet. He falls all the time. He can only answer in 1 or 2 words. He cannot process anymore. So we have so much to learn. Let's think about our, because there was not another accident, but yet his brain continued to have these challenges even after the accident. Let's think about our NFL football players. The NFL football players, they have several different concussions, and yet after they stop playing football, there's still progressive loss that happens years later. Once that loss starts, unfortunately, we don't have anything left to stop that loss from happening. We don't have anything else to fill in what they've lost, which is what we're going to talk about today. Okay. The problem. What is the problem here? Because it is a massive problem. We're looking for dementia in all the wrong places. Here's the number one early most missed sign in medical visits. Loss of executive function in complex daily activities. Not memory loss. Not confusion. Loss of executive function. What does that mean? Because we're going to dive deep into this. What do I mean by executive brain function? Okay. What are medical providers missing? Office cognitive tests don't capture real-world complex loss. Right? Yep. MoCA and MC tests they test basic cognitive functions based in memory problems. Now, I hear from family members, my dad, he went into the doctor's office. He could remember those 3 things. Yeah, he remembered them. He got a really great score on the MC test. The doctor said he's fine. But what happens? Then we took Dad home, and he's struggling at home with all of these complex multitasks that he used to do on autopilot. Executive function requires a different complex task assignment or assessment. And guess what? Patients compensate during the medical visits. Why do they compensate? Because they do not want anyone to know that there's a problem, because what's going to happen if there's a problem? They lose control. They get put in a home. So their brain compensates. They're motivated to appear competent to the providers, right? And they practice, and I hear so many family members, they go into the doctor's office, and they're individuals answering questions, and the caregivers in the background going, "No, that's not what's happening." But guess what? Their loved ones often answer for them. They try and make it look a little better. Why do we as loved ones do that? We don't want it to be. That's right. We don't want it to be. And we don't want anybody else to know. If you take them somewhere where they're being assessed, like at a dementia care place, you don't want that marketer to feel like they really know about the challenges, because what's going to happen if that marketer really knows about these challenges? They're not going to accept them, right? Oh, no, we don't have to tell, we shouldn't tell them about that particular challenge, no. Social skills remain intact longer than cognitive abilities. I call that the hostess facade. So what do they do when they're out in public? They try and remain as normal, functioning as normal as possible. I'm okay, I'm fine, I'm handling it. And we're also going to talk about a dementia symptom called anosognosia, that their brain is actually trying to help them look normal. That's a neurological challenge as well, because their brain believes it's normal, by the way. Okay, providers are focusing on these obvious red flags that don't come till later. They're looking for this severe memory loss that hasn't even developed yet, because that, ironically, often is the last to go. Clear confusion that comes in later stages. So these often early unrecognized symptoms go on for years, and we're not trained to see it, and neither is the medical provider, because what I encourage family members to do is to start journaling when these first start to show up. These changes in behavior that we're talking about. And even though it might come and go, we need to be journaling to help the medical professionals see this in real life because these behavioral changes, often the family doesn't report because we as that family caregiver are not dementia aware to recognize it. But you're going to walk out today dementia aware so that you can recognize this much earlier. That's what we need to help everyone understand. Okay, so what does it really look like in real life? Let's talk about that. And you can help me with this too because you're in real life. Financial management becomes impossible. This is an early sign. Checkbook balancing that took 10 minutes in the past now takes 2 hours. Or they don't do it, but yet they'll complain that whatever's happening isn't right. Yeah. Even, absolutely. Absolutely, and scams can get them quick. Bills get paid twice or not at all despite good intentions. Complex financial decisions begin to be avoided or delegated suddenly. You know, Dad always would take care of if there needed to be a truck for sale, he'd take care of it. Now the son or daughter walks up and said, Dad, I thought you were going to sell the truck months ago. Oh yeah, I'll get to it. They avoid it because they can't process it any longer. This one I find so interesting. I hear this so much from family members. Driving skills deteriorate in subtle ways. Maybe they get lost in familiar neighborhoods. They turn right instead of left, or they just have to go around the block. But this one is really interesting. They begin at first to have difficulty with the multi-step tasks. So why would they have more difficulty turning left than right? What else do you have to think about when you turn left besides turning? Oncoming traffic. Yes. Pedestrians. Yes. So if you're driving straight ahead, you don't have to think about as many things, right? When you make a decision to turn right, it's less thinking than turning left. So what we will see is a breakdown in the multi-step tasks that they used to be able to do on autopilot. So they can be very subtle. What about parking? Why does parking become more difficult? What do you have to think about more in parking? The lines, how close you are to someone else. You have to back up, right? My mother-in-law, after she had a stroke, she was a great driver. She took great pride in keeping her car very nice. But she would come home from the grocery store with a scuff on the bumper or a dent in the door. And she would say, I don't know when that happened. I don't know. Someone must have backed into me. But then we found out later she was actually being confronted because she would run into somebody and then drive off. She wouldn't even realize that she did it, right? Talk about multi-step processing, right? The family starts to notice increased anxiety about driving, but it doesn't come out like, oh, I'm not going to drive anymore. How does it come out? They drive and what happens? They not necessarily get in an accident, but they're constantly anxious. And it's always everybody else's fault, right? Yeah. Okay. Multi-step tasks become overwhelming. Think about in our life how many multi-step tasks we do all the time. And pieces of that will start to really show up as loss. What about cooking elaborate meals they've made for decades? Okay, Grandma made the best banana bread. Everybody wanted her to bring banana bread at all the holiday parties. That recipe was in her brain. She gets Alzheimer's. Now all of a sudden, her banana bread is inedible because she confuses the salt and the sugar or misses some kind of important step. But she doesn't realize it's different. She has hurt feelings because suddenly nobody wants to eat her banana bread. In her brain, she's doing it exactly the same way. Managing multiple medications correctly. That's a huge multi-step task. My mother-in-law, once again, she had this stroke. Now, she was on many, many medications. She had this big, huge medication sorter. Had morning, afternoon, evening medications. And she always had managed her medications, my father-in-law's medication. She always just had it all managed. Then she had this stroke and she began to struggle with this. Now she could still do a lot of things. She was living in a 55 plus community playing bridge every day. She could do that. She still could do that after her stroke. But medication suddenly became a problem. So her son, my husband's brother, who lived close by, would go once a week and sort out her medications in this complex medication sorter. And then one day he came and did that. The next day he was horrified because he came over and all the medications were gone. It was empty. We still to this day don't know what she did with them, whether she took them. So he said, "What happened?" And she said, "Oh, you didn't come and do it. You missed it." So he filled it up again. And the next day, she had very neatly taken all the blue ones and put them in Monday, taken all the red ones and put them in Tuesday. All the brown ones were in Wednesday. And she said, when he said, "What did you do, Mom?" And she said, "Well, you didn't do it right." Yet she was functioning on such a high level elsewhere at that time. It is so difficult for us to distinguish this because family members will say, "No, it's not dementia. She remembers who we are. She remembers this or that." Oh, and there's all of these other losses that they aren't recognizing is happening, okay? Planning and executing social events and keeping up with conversations in group settings. They begin to be more introverted because in a group setting such as this, they can't process all this information coming at them, so they isolate. They become quieter. But it's subtle. And it's not like they say to you, "Gosh, I'm having a hard time processing this," because they don't realize they're having a hard time processing it. So these can be so very subtle. Yes?
Hearing loss makes it worse.
And hearing loss makes it worse because we're going to talk about that. Because they can't, it's not only they can't hear it, they can't process it. Yep. Exactly. Because not being able to process what we hear is a huge dementia symptom. Huge. And it happens early. These things are happening years before the family realizes that they need to get some help. So what's a better approach? Well, I believe becoming dementia aware. So what I do is I have the family members ask themselves this. We can't ask the person with dementia symptoms because they're not going to be able to answer that. They don't recognize it. But what specific tasks can't they do anymore that they could do on autopilot 2 years ago? You will start to see this change in their ability that can be very, very subtle. Have they stopped managing their finances or medications without help? Have they gotten lost or confused in familiar surroundings? And even temporarily. You know, they've lived in this house for years. They're going to the bathroom. They turn right. Now, they realize that's not right, but then they need to turn left. It can be just a very subtle change, but it will begin to happen more and more. Have they stopped doing any activities that they enjoyed in the past? You know, "Mom, you don't do crossword puzzles anymore." "Yeah, I used to really love to do that, but yeah, I just don't feel like it anymore." Include all caregivers in the assessment. You know, when my father began to show dementia symptoms, and my mom was covering for him for years, obviously, and it made such an impact on her life, we, the family, made all the wrong decisions to try and help him. When she passed away from that heart attack suddenly, We thought, all of my siblings, my biological siblings, my foster siblings, we thought, oh, what we'll do to help shoulder this burden is that we'll take turns caring for my dad and we'll just move him around every couple of months. Oh my gosh, that was the wrong thing to do. That's when I first started looking at going, I don't think we get this very well. And he was just failing and struggling. And he went to stay with my brother in Alaska, and he would call me all the time, and he didn't understand what was going on. And he'd call me, and he'd say, come and get me. I need to come stay with you. And I'd say, well, you're coming to stay with me in 4 weeks or whatever. No, you have to come get me today. And he was so upset. So every one of us could have helped his medical team if we would have been able to journal all of this and bring it to them. Every one of us were seeing this from a different perspective. Okay? So everyone, but in order for them to do the assessment, what do they need to do? They need to become dementia aware because they need to know what they're looking for, right? Okay, so family members notice functional decline months before they try and get any tests happening. And before the medical providers can really see the problems, okay? When families say something's not right, they're detecting this loss of executive function and changes that our medical system right now is not designed to measure. We need to get them dementia aware, don't we? The most important question, once again, for early detection, what activities have become more difficult in the past 2 years? All activities. It might be difficulty with activities of daily living, like grooming, that they were fastidious about in the past. Now they just can't do it on their own anymore. It can be very subtle. Executive function decline is going to predict dementia symptoms better than memory complaints. Okay? All right. So when we start to see this executive function loss, we need to take it seriously, even if we're not seeing memory loss. It breaks my heart when I hear families tell me this story. Oh, our dad was always an athlete. He played softball, he rode bikes, he swam, he did Ironman competitions. Then after he turned 65, he began to complain that his coordination and balance was a little bit off. Subtle, but he just was a little off with his movements. The way that he described it years and years ago was, it felt like he was throwing a softball through molasses. His coordination was just slowed down. His balance was off. He even changed his gait a little bit. He kind of leaned sideways, just small. So at that time, he went to his family physician, talked about these symptoms, and the physician 15 years ago just smiled at him and said, oh yeah, you're getting older, that's going to happen. Now, 15 years later, Dad has tremors. He's an extreme fall risk. He falls 3, 4, 5 times a day, freezes. Now he's starting to have hallucinations. So the family takes him to a neurologist familiar with dementia symptoms. They run him through a battery of tests, and the neurologist says, oh, he's got Parkinson's. He's probably had it for 20 years. Yeah. And a lot of times families say, well, we didn't know that there was such things as physical dementia symptoms. We didn't know that. We thought it was all about memory loss. He remembers everything. Often Parkinson's does not affect their memory at all, even current memories. So we're going to talk about that. Okay. So this is our hope. You are now going to look at this very differently, and you're going to help the medical community and everyone, all kinds of care providers, better understand what it means to have dementia symptoms. So let's look at some of these often unrecognized dementia symptoms. Loss of the ability to do activities of daily living, things that they've always taken care of all their life. For example, familiar tasks such as selecting and getting dressed. We're going to talk about in a minute what executive function that we lose that makes this difficult. Okay? So there's a part of their brain that they have to use to go into their closet. You do this every day when you have a healthy brain. You open your drawer, you go into your closet, you say, oh, I'm going to wear this today. It's cold outside. You're doing all this thinking, this processing. You make that decision, and then you go through the necessary steps to put those clothes on. That's a lot of processing. It takes a lot of learned executive function for you to be able to do that in a normal way. We begin to see that change. And I hear this from family members. Yeah, Mom, she just wants to wear her pink sweatshirt and her pink sweats. She doesn't want to change her clothes, and she gets really upset when we say she needs to change her clothes, but they're dirty and she needs to change them. She absolutely will not change. And if we ask her, would you like to wear this? She says no. Right? We're going to talk about why this is happening. But that is an early dementia symptom. The inability to make decisions about common tasks that they could make decisions in the past on autopilot. So it's going to lead to that appearance of being unkept. Behavioral changes. Someone who's an extrovert suddenly becomes an introvert. Why are they doing that? They can no longer process that information that they could process in the past. It's all about loss of the ability to process that executive brain function that is used for them to find meaning and think and get the job done. There's interruptions in that process. They lose interest in activities. Mood and personality changes. I hear from family members all the time something like this. She's not the same woman I married. Not the same person. And they're not. They're losing this little bit of themselves over and over and over again. Cognitive decline. This one we're really going to dive into. You know, every one of us in here, haven't you had that opportunity when you know the right word or someone's name, it's right on the tip of your tongue, and for some reason you can't find it? What do you do when that happens? What do you do?
I swear.
You swear. That's good. I like that. That's a good process right there. You process. You think. You start to think, and you search that information in your brain. What if you go to search that information and Alzheimer's robbed it from you? Are you ever going to find it? It's gone for good. Now you're going to see increased challenges understanding and processing what you see, what you hear, how to safely ambulate. Every millisecond of every day, our brain is constantly having to process information. And it's really good at filtering out information that has no meaning for us because we don't need that information. Your brain is good at sorting things that have meaning for you. And we're going to talk about why this is important. But they begin to have trouble processing even information that they could process in the past. Okay? They have difficulty following a plot on TV. I hear from family members all the time, oh, Dad used to watch Law and Order, but he can't sit there and watch that anymore because he can't process the plot. He can only process in the moment, not what's going to happen a minute later and not what happened a minute before. Okay, so you can't process an ongoing plot if you can only process in the moment, right? Or keeping up with the conversation, because that also takes processing and storing and activating all of that thinking ability. I was an executive director for years, and in my dementia care, I had a lovely gentleman who, in the past, his routine that he would get up in the morning, have a cup of coffee, and read the newspaper. Now, even after he had dementia symptoms, I would go down, he'd be having his cup of coffee, he'd be holding his newspaper, but you know, if you watched him, you'd realize he never turned the page. He was not processing. It just felt good for him to hold the paper. To him, he felt like he was processing it, but he was not at all. He could not process. Have you ever been reading something that was interesting to you, but your mind wanders off, and you turn the page and you realize that you just read something, but it didn't stick at all? Yeah, because you didn't process it and store it. You read it, but your brain wasn't working. You were not thinking and processing at that time. So you have to go back and think and process and read it again, right? Yeah. Okay. Disorientation. They begin to find difficulty in distinguishing between time and place. So I want to stop here for a minute and really revisit the fact that this is not about memory loss. Because I think you'll all agree that your loved ones or your clients or your patients or your residents, they have, even if they have dementia symptoms going on, they have memories stored in their brain from their past. It's just that they begin to have problems processing and storing information current, right? Okay, so why do they have those memories from the past? Why are they there in their brain? Long-term, yes, those are the long-term memories. That's what we call them. But why do they have those, but they don't have current memories? It does have to do with emotions, yes. That's when their brain was still healthy, so they could store it. Now they can't store it anymore. They can only live in the moment because there's no place in their brain to store what's happening now. Okay? So, Cindy, if you have dementia symptoms, and I'm helping you right now, you can only process in the moment. Only in the moment. So if I ask you, would you like chicken or fish, which one is she going to say? Nope. She's going to say fish. Why? Because it's right there. Okay, when I say chicken and pull it away, it's gone. There's no place in her brain to store chicken for her to make the decision. She can't make that decision because she's going to say fish just to answer me because it's right there. But what's going to happen if I go make her a fish and bring it back? What's she going to tell me? I didn't order this. I wanted chicken. Right? Because it's gone. That's why it looks like memory loss. But she didn't lose the memory. She never had it. Because there's no place in her brain to store it. But she still has those memories from the past and the feelings associated. So we're going to talk about that. Eventually, that long-term memory will be affected as well. But that's not the first thing we see. We don't wait for that. Okay? That happens later. Okay. They may feel lost, like I said, in that familiar space because of that. So let's talk about all the information that we've learned throughout our lifetime. It's a good darn thing that our brain is set up the way it is. Because we learn, time we learn something new, novel, and complex, we store it in our brain to use later, especially if it has meaning and emotions attached to it. The stronger the emotions and feelings attached to anything we learn, the better we learn. But our brain categorizes all this information. Can you imagine if every time we learn something new, novel, and complex, we just dumped it in a pile in our brain And if we wanted to go find it, we'd have to sort through all the other information, and it might be at the bottom of the pile. Would that work? No way. So our brain is compartmentalized. So when we learn to process sensory information such as touch and depth perception and spatial perception, we store it in the parietal lobe so that we can go find it later. When we learn something new, novel, and complex that has to do with higher cognitive functions or voluntary movement or judgment, or a lot of times that's some of these emotions that come with judgment, those kinds of things are stored in the frontal lobe. And that affects our behavior, by the way. Okay? Behavior has everything to do with the frontal lobe. Temporal lobe handles hearing, memory, processing, and auditory information. The occipital lobe, and we're really going to talk about this too, the occipital lobe processes visual information, color, shape, motion. Our spinal cord is that hardwired communication between our brain. So if I'm sitting in my chair and I decide I want to go get some yummy food, my brain sends that information down my spinal cord, but I have to think about it and get my brain in gear first. It sends the information down for my limbs to access what I've learned in life, such as balance and coordination, so that I can get up and safely walk back there and get something to eat. Okay? Now, the cerebellum coordinates balance, posture, precise muscle movements. Now, the reason why I really want you to look at this is because dementia symptoms vary depending on the cause and where the brain functions are being robbed from them. So that's why we have different dementia symptoms from the different causes. So let's look at this. This is a drawing of half of a healthy brain. And you can see it's full of brain matter, brain cells, brain chemicals. It is full and thick because every time we learn something new, novel, and complex, we store that information, if it has meaning to us, we store that information in the little microscopic brain cells, and our brain gets thicker and thicker. We want a nice, thick brain full of all this information because we need this information to function. Now, look at this half of an Alzheimer's brain. What do you see different there? There's holes, yes. Yes, it looks like Swiss cheese. We're going to talk exactly about that here in a little while. Look how far away it shrunk from the skull. And it is everywhere. It's not just long-term memory. As a matter of fact, it hasn't even gotten to that point yet. It's loss of the ability to understand language, to understand in a normal way what we see, to understand in a normal way how to move safely, to understand in a normal way what we're hearing every day. All of that we've learned throughout our lifetime. Anything that you have learned in your lifetime, you can lose if you get one of these causes. Anything. We begin to unlearn. So, now we're going to talk about Swiss cheese, by the way. When I go and do this presentation, often I have people who come up to me and say, be sure and tell the story about the cheese. That helped me understand so much what was going on in Mom's brain. So, here we go. I want you to imagine that if we had a big picture window right here and we could see in each other's brain, let's imagine it doesn't look like that gray matter that I just showed you. Let's imagine that a healthy human brain would look like a wheel of cheddar cheese. A dense, thick wheel of cheddar cheese. And we want lots of cheese because every time we learn something new, novel, and complex, we make more cheese. And we need to be able to access lots of cheese. Think about how much cheese we need. Let's go back to driving for a minute. How much cheese did you have to make to learn to drive a car? You had to be able to process what you see, process what you hear in real time, process physical things that you needed to do. So what cheese did you need to form when you're driving and you see a green light? You push on the accelerator. What cheese did you need to form when you see a red light when you're driving? Brake pedal. Then we just talked about how complex it is to make a right turn, to make a left. You have to process in your mind a map or use Apple CarPlay, which I prefer because then it's thinking for me, right? We have to process which direction we're going and how to get there and how much time it's going to take. That's a lot of cheese. Not only that, in order to drive safely, we often have to process for other people who don't have enough driving cheese. Do you agree with that?
Yes.
Yes. There's a lot of people out there need to make some more driving cheese. Okay. So that's throughout our whole life. Everything we do, in order for us to do it, we had to make cheese to be able to store that and use that information later. Language. Learning a new language. Learning English, if that's your native tongue, from the time you were an infant. How to safely ambulate. What to do when you see a chair. What information do you need for that to use a chair safely? All of that, we've learned that it's stored in there. We need lots of cheese. We have to have cheese. What happens when we begin to see dementia symptoms is basically a dirty rat has gotten into our cheese. That dirty rat could be any one of these 100 causes. Any one of them. So what happens is it's a hungry dirty rat. It gets in our cheese. We have no rat trap to get it out. We don't even know really for sure how it got there. But once it's there, it's there. And it is a hungry dirty rat running around our cheddar cheese, grabbing greedy bites of cheese and leaving holes. Leaving holes. And so now this person that always could access the cheese that they've established and developed and learned to use throughout their lifetime, now it's a roll of the dice when they go to access this information that they've accessed on autopilot all their life. It's a roll of the dice whether they're going to hit cheese or a hole. And there's more and more holes until their cheese begins to look like Swiss cheese. Now, the interesting thing about this is there's still cheese. That's why it's so confusing. So yes, indeed, that person often hits cheese, and when they hit cheese, they act and look and feel normal. Well, mom can still do this. That's not dementia, right? But you can't do this. When they hit a hole, that's when we see these dementia symptoms. It's their brain compensating for loss. But there's all these different symptoms because it's all over that brain. And what's even more interesting is that person goes to access cheese, and if they hit a hole, they don't feel any different. Their brain believes they're still hitting cheese. It's a phenomenon called, a very common dementia symptom called anosognosia. I watched this happen and learned about it so much when I was an executive director, watching my staff struggle with this. Because I watched my staff, wonderful, loving staff, who was not yet dementia aware, early in my executive director journey, I watched my staff do this. They would walk up to my residents and they would say, "Can I help you with a shower?" What almost always did our dementia care residents say? No. What else did they say?
I've already taken it.
I've already taken it. Because their brain believes it's still functioning normally. They do not recognize what they don't know any longer. We see it, but their brain wants them to believe that they're still functioning normally because the very portion of their brain that would know that they're impaired, that would know that they have this problem, has a hole in it. it's not working anymore. So they will argue with you.
Then do they make up a scenario
Yes,
to
Yes.
fulfill what they're
yes, it's called that brain hallucination. Their brain is trying to make this real to them because there's pieces missing. So it's trying to jam a piece in that jigsaw puzzle that doesn't really fit, but they just feel like it should.
And they believe it.
They believe it, absolutely. It is real. So we're going to talk about how we deal with that because we're going to talk about what's left. That's really left. And I can tell you that their ability to process facts and figures is gone. So what are they going to say to you if you say, no, you didn't take a shower? You can't take a shower because you have dementia symptoms. What are they going to tell you?
Yes, I do.
Yes, I did, and you're full of malarkey. And I can tell you, you will never win an argument with someone who has dementia symptoms because they believe that's what's happening.
Because that's what their brain is telling them.
That's what their brain is telling them. Absolutely. That's exactly what they're hearing loud and clear in their head.
So what I do, I don't ask anymore.
Right.
I say we're going to the market.
Yes. We're gonna get exactly in there. That's exactly what we do. No questions or options. Yep. And I'm going to tell you why. So hold on. I'm getting there. I know this is so much information, so hang in there with me. But are the light bulbs going off? You're going, oh, that's why. Yeah. And that's why we need to become dementia aware, because it would not help you at all if I walked up here today and say, okay, no more questions or options. See ya. Even though that's what we're going to get to. Okay? You have to know why. We have to help the world know why we have to change this. Okay? Perfect. And I'm telling you, you figured it out and you know this works, but we're going to help everybody else get there. Okay? Perfect. Okay, so part 2. What are we seeing when dementia symptoms are present? So I want you to go all the way back in your mind. When a human healthy infant is born, they are born with basic brain functions. They come with the ability to, their brain keeps them breathing and swallowing and conscious, and their heart beating and their blood pressure. And they're also born with basic vision, hearing, and movement. Now, throughout our life, we learn how to enhance vision, hearing, and movement with learned brain functions that are on top of these basic brain functions that we're born with. For example, it's been proven that a healthy human infant, 4 hours after they're born, can see the difference between mommy's face and daddy's face.
That's very true.
Yes, but we also learn throughout our lifetime what it is we're seeing, what that means to us, how it feels, and how important it is for us to store this knowledge in our brain. Because really, we don't see with our eyes. We see with our brain. You know, our eyes are the window, but until that information gets to our brain so that we can learn what it is we're seeing and what it means to us, it doesn't mean anything. So, also, we're born with raw emotion. We come with these raw emotions. And what we learn has to be attached to raw emotion for us to learn. The stronger the emotion, the better we learn. Okay? So here's this infant in mommy's arms. They see mommy's face. What raw emotions is that infant feeling when they're looking at mommy's face? What raw emotions come to mind? Security and love and safety and comfort. And those emotions strengthen that learning because those emotions are attached to the vision of mommy's face and they store that together. So when that infant goes and gets that stored information later, along with it comes the emotions. Okay, stronger the emotion, the better we learn. Okay, so we can actually have dementia symptoms when our occipital lobe, the brain, is attacked, and we might see something, but we don't process it normally when we have one of these causes in our brain. So we will actually have dementia symptoms caused by these changes in our brain from these causes. For example, someone with dementia symptoms often has difficulty with depth perception because that's something we learn. You know, going up and down steps is something that we have to learn. We have to see the step, and then we have to send that information about how high that step is. And there's a standard height, actually. I think it's 7 3/4 inches. I can't remember exactly. But there's a standard height for stairs. So our brain learns that, and it sends the information. We see the step, sends the information to our foot about how high to pick up that step. Do you know that an early dementia sign is when someone continuously trips going up steps? Uh-oh. What did we see President Biden do often? That can be an early loss of depth perception is an early unrecognized dementia symptom. Okay, reduced peripheral vision. You know, I can see my hands looking straight ahead. I can see my hands till about right here. Now, what happens is that peripheral vision, they will begin to have tunnel vision. So that's why you can often startle them if you come up from behind them and you're standing next to them and you perhaps touch them or talk to them before you're in that tunnel vision. They can't see you any longer. That's a dementia symptom because that information on how to process what they're seeing somehow gets lost in that whole translation. That is loss of the ability to process periphery. It's the processing again. Difficulties in color discrimination. You know, I just figured this out. I was working with an artist who's a very famous artist in LA, did a lot of those beautiful murals in downtown LA. She has Alzheimer's disease, and one of her dementia symptoms is that she can no longer process color. She can't process she sees blue and red, but her brain can't process the difference any longer. We don't see with our eyes, we see with our brain. That's why we can lose this information, and that's what happens when we have these kinds of symptoms. Did you all know that these were symptoms of dementia? Yeah, isn't that crazy? There's so much more that can be going on. Detecting motion, that's why you have to slow down, because that often can become a problem. Unable to notice color contrast, you know, black and gray may be very difficult for them to see the difference because they're too close together, okay? And suddenly the brain is unable to process this information. This once again is these dementia symptoms that often go unrecognized, okay? Now this one, I really find this fascinating because it is not our ears that hear, it is our brain. But let's go all the way back to that human infant again. When a human infant comes to this world, they hear. But they have to learn what it is they're hearing, what it means to them, store it in their brain with how it makes them feel so that they can use it later. For example, an infant can hear a loud sound, but if they hear a loud sound, how does that make them feel? Startled. How do you as an adult feel when you hear a loud sound? Startled, because you stored that as an infant in your brain, and that's what you feel. Now, throughout our lifetime, we have to process a gazillion, billion, trillion sounds in order to understand communication. Right now, your brain is having to process hundreds of sounds coming out of my mouth. Please understand that these sounds that you're hearing, they don't come out of my mouth as words. They come out as sounds, and they travel across the airwaves in a millisecond and hit your ear as a sound. It's not until that sound goes to your brain to be processed into words does it change into words that have meaning. It's just sounds. Your brain has learned to process the sound because of how these sounds turn into words that have meaning. Now, my mission today is to not just spout these sounds, but I've taken a very long time to work these sounds into words that make sentences that you can understand, that you're going to walk out of here feeling empowered and more confident and understand dementia. That's my intention. I want you to get these sounds, turn them into the words that have meaning for you, store them, and then later you go out and go, oh yeah, Laura told me to try that, and doggone it, it works. That's what I want. Now let me prove to you how important it is to have that emotion, that intention, that feeling, that meaning behind it for you to learn as a human. Because how would you all feel if you came here today and we just spent a good amount of time together? How would you feel if I gave the entire presentation from start to finish like this? Blah, 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 blah. Y'all hear that, right? You hear it? Does it mean anything? After a few minutes, what would you want to do? Leave. Yes, you would. Absolutely. This lady's crazy. I'm wasting my time. What if I stood at the only door and I did this? Blah, blah, blah. How are you feeling now? Yep. Okay, so what if I came up to you and you knew I was asking you a question, but you couldn't understand the question, and I'm expecting you to answer. Blah, blah, blah.
No blah blah.
What does she want me to do? Go away. Right? Now, she knows that because of my inflection, she knows I'm asking her to respond. So let's talk about this for a minute. When you hear a question, when you have a normal brain, what do you have to do to respond? Think. Someone with dementia symptoms has a broken thinker. So when we ask them to think, how does that make them feel? Frustrated, anxious, angry, yes. But with a healthy brain, all your life it's worked. Now I'm asking you to change that lifelong habit, because that person with dementia symptoms who's struggling with this most often can't process the question, so you're just frustrating them. You're locking up their brain. You're making them anxious. So most of the time, they will respond by resisting you. But isn't this ironic? Like I said, I was an executive director for years, watching my staff struggle with this. And I'm trying to figure it out. I'm watching the residents, and I taught my staff, just like most communities, unless they're dementia aware, do, I taught my staff to ask questions. It's polite. So I would watch them on the floor from morning to night and watch the reaction of my staff, because this is what they would do. I taught them to do this. Good morning. Would you like to get up? What would you like to wear? Do you like cream in your coffee? Would you like to go listen to the music? What do you think they're feeling? Because what are they actually hearing? Blah, blah, blah. Yes, blah, blah, blah. So by the end of the day, it went from this. no, I don't, no, 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 no. And they would sundown. Sundowning is extreme behaviors in the afternoon or evening. Family members would tell me this. Other communities would say, that's what we're experiencing too. So I told my staff, really thinking about this, trying to get inside that brain that has these challenges, I said, for 48 hours, we're not going to ask any questions or give options. The staff went, okay, no questions, only positive action statements. We're only going to give them the answer that makes them feel good, no questions. I call it playing Dementia Jeopardy. With Jeopardy, we give the person the answer they're supposed to find the question. With Dementia Jeopardy, we give them the answer that makes them feel good. That's it. No more questions. So, instead of asking questions, we did positive action statements. Good morning. You look beautiful today. Come with me. I've made your favorite for breakfast. I know you like toast and scrambled eggs. Here you go. No more questions. Only the answers that made them feel loved, safe, secure, or valued. This takes practice because we're used to asking questions, right? Do you know that after 48 hours, we had 95% less sundowning? We had 99% more cooperation and less resistance. Then I discovered, I can't just train the staff. I have to train the families because what do you think the families did? Here's mom sitting there. She's been having breakfast. She's been with us for about a month. My staff is all dementia aware. They fed her breakfast, her favorite this morning. No resistance. In comes the daughter who's not yet dementia aware and says, Mom, did you have breakfast? And mom goes, no, they don't feed me here. Because the question scares her. So then I sit with the daughter. The next day, she becomes dementia aware. She comes in and she doesn't ask the question. She says, Mom, I see they made your favorite French toast. And mom goes, yeah, they made my favorite. They take such good care of me. Uh-oh. And then there's this challenge because there also can be hearing loss as well. So what do we do with that? I hear this from families all the time. Oh, yeah, Dad, we thought he was not hearing very well. He kept saying, what? He was resisting us. We took him to the audiologist. The audiologist runs him through a test. What does that test ask Dad to do? Think. Process. Dad's having trouble. Now, he may have some hearing loss, but he's not going to process that test. He's going to fail because he can't process. So the audiologist gives him a hearing aid. How do we know for sure, and I've seen this so often, that that person has hearing loss or the dementia symptom of loss of ability to process what they hear? Because if we put that hearing aid in their ear and it's loss of processing, what do they do with the hearing aid? They take it out and throw it away. Why?
Doesn't help.
It not only doesn't help, it makes blah, blah, blah sound like blah, blah, blah. It's not processing or helping them to understand it. They just hear the confusion louder. So there's this double-edged sword because they may need the hearing aid for the hearing loss, but they'll never be able to use it because they can't process it even when the hearing aid helps them to hear it. Isn't that crazy? Yes.
The same thing's happening with vision exams.
Yep. Eyeglasses, yes.
He can see everything, but he can't tell them what they're on.
Exactly. So how did they know that he can see it? That's why I go into dementia care. I don't like to call it memory care, by the way. Dementia care communities. And the families will come up to me and say, you know, today I came in and my dad had Joe's glasses on. And I said, well, it doesn't really matter because he can't see either way. He's not processing it. And they'll say, well, they need to keep the right glasses on him. And I said, well, yes, we can try, but that's not the issue. We have to think for them with what they hear and what they see. So that's what we're going to talk about is learning to think for them. And of course, people don't realize that there can be great loss of ability to process how to move safely. That's why falling is a very early sign of dementia symptoms. It's loss of that learned balance and coordination that we learn as a toddler. And that also is connected to how we feel. That is connected to how we feel. So I'm a healthy adult and I'm sitting here and I want to go get a cookie. So I send that information to my brain, that my brain accesses balance and coordination that I learned a long time ago. I feel confident, I go get a cookie. How does that make me feel? Good, independent, self-sufficient. Now, that same brain has had Parkinson's in there going on for 10 years. Now, every time I go to access getting up to do anything, to go get a cookie, that I have lost that balance and coordination information that I learned years ago. And when I learned that as a toddler, how does a toddler feel when they take their first steps? What emotions are attached? Proud, accomplished, self-sufficient. Oh, right, I don't have to stay on the porch. I can run with the big dogs now, right? That's still here when we're adults. So how is it going to make Cindy feel if she's got Parkinson's and every time she goes to get up, she falls down, but I'm not dementia aware as her caregiver, so this is what I do. Cindy, don't get up unless you use the walker because you're going to fall. How do I just make her feel? It's all about how we make them feel with our care approach, because I want to talk to her feelings that are left. What feelings are left when it comes to her getting up and being independent? I want to talk to those feelings. So not use this walker because you're going to fall, but Cindy, you're always so good at keeping yourself safe. I'm so proud of you. Come on, let's go. When you use your walker, you're helping so much. Come on, let's go. Do you hear the difference? I'm talking to her feelings. No facts, figures, or questions. Talk to the feelings because that's what's left. Okay, so what is left? When they lose this executive function they've learned over a lifetime, the feelings attached are left. This is your power. This is what's going to help them to communicate with you and trust you, because you're going to start talking to the feelings, not the situation or event. So when I bring this infant home, it has a way to communicate to me what it's feeling. Yeah? Basic. But is this infant able to think or process yet? No. It feels and reacts, right? It will learn. It will learn to think and process, but not yet. So what do I need to do as a parent? I need to go through a process of elimination to figure out what this infant is feeling, because it's feeling something. So, okay, it's not tired, just woke up from a nap. It's swaddled, it's clean, it's warm. I haven't fed it for a while. What might it be feeling? Hungry. So I'm going to take a positive action and feed it. Yes. All right, so how would I make this infant feel if I decided I needed to ask questions? We ask questions in life, right? Why are you crying, baby? Are you hungry? Would you like the pink bottle or the blue bottle today? How am I going to make that infant feel? Yeah, there you go. It's running on raw emotion. This is what we're dealing with those individuals who are losing executive brain function. They're no longer regulating those feelings. They're just feeling and reacting. So what we want to do is take positive action and talk to the feelings. That's what we do now. Okay, so they have what I call a broken thinker. Dementia-aware individuals learn to think for them. We fill in the holes in their cheese for them, but it's only in the moment. They can't store this. So when we find what works, we repeat, but we don't expect them to continue storing that and using it later. We have to keep in mind that it's only in the moment. Okay, so I used to use Maya Angelou's famous quote, people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel. But it's not about forgetting. It's much deeper than this. It's the loss of ability to process. Individuals with dementia symptoms cannot always process in a normal way what you say. They're hearing blah, blah, blah. Individuals with dementia symptoms cannot always process what you do. They may not be seeing that in a normal way. But whatever you do and whatever you say will always make them feel. So be careful what you do and say. Okay. It's not easy though. How do we make this positive impact? No questions or options. Not would you like to wear the blue blouse or the pink blouse, but I love it when you wear the blue blouse, it matches your eyes. Okay? We join their feelings. I see you're about ready to go for a walk. I was ready too. You know what? It's a little cool out there. Let's go together, but let's go get your sweater. See how I'm joining them? I'm not telling them, no, you can't go out that door, because how is that going to make them feel? They're going to resist you. We use positive action statements. Come with me. I love it when we go together. Yeah? I'm not demanding. I'm inviting. We stay calm, confident, patient, and present in their moment. Why do we have to stay present in their moment? That's all they can process. And so, what's going to happen when we hear this? Where are we going? We do not want to do this for them. Oh, at 1 o'clock we're going to the doctor's office and then we have to run errands. Blah, 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 blah. Because they may listen to that, but it'll make them anxious. Then what will they do 5 minutes later? Where are we going? Where are we going? So we don't answer with the facts, we answer with the feelings. Where are we going? Oh, it's beautiful outside. I love it when we can go for a drive together. Let's go. Not 2 hours before, where we're saying in 2 hours, we have to be in the moment. Come on, let's go. Okay, we realize that we have to accept that we're not stopping, fixing, or changing the behaviors. We're not stopping, fixing, or changing the decline. We can't. We have no way to do it. We're joining them. We're on this journey together, and we're helping them to manage it, and we're giving them permission to feel whatever they're feeling in that moment. We give them permission. That's what's real to them. And we help them as often as possible to feel loved, safe, secure, and valued. But it's only in the moment. You know, their brain will default back to that negative thoughts and that energy. See, our primitive brain only does 3 things. Our primitive brain accesses pleasure, our primitive brain avoids pain, and our primitive brain wants to rest. So what is our primitive brain doing when, I get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and I know I need to go exercise, I know I need to do it, but my primitive brain goes, oh, you worked really hard yesterday, you need to rest. Yes, because my primitive brain doesn't want me to go out there because that's not accessing pleasure. So I have to convince my primitive brain, oh, I know it feels like I need to rest, but I'll feel so much better tomorrow if I can, I have to teach my primitive brain that I am really accessing pleasure, even though it doesn't feel that in the moment. What we're dealing with is someone who's running a lot on the feelings just from that primitive brain. You see that. And their primitive brain will go, that doesn't feel good. Nope, not doing that one. So they can no longer use logic to pull out of that. They'll default to that every time. So we have to help them and think for them.
Yeah, I just realized in the dementia unit where my mother was for a while, there was a minister who couldn't talk but he could sing, and he had a beautiful voice, and he could sing all the songs that you sing in church. He remembered everything, but he couldn't talk.
Yeah,
But I mean, that's what he processed.
but what was he feeling?
All the
What does music make us feel?
it feels good, and he remembered all the words
Yes.
to the songs.
Yes, I have worked with many with advanced dementia symptoms. But if I come in and bring a cupcake and a candle and sing happy birthday, what do they do with me?
Sing.
Sing it. Yes. So why can't we make it their birthday every day? Why not? Makes them feel good. That's what we're going to learn to do. That's why it's so helpful when we get these different perspectives. And, I did this and Mom felt good for a moment. Oh, great. That's being dementia aware. And we don't give them the information that makes them feel overwhelmed or frightened. So we don't ask questions. We don't want them to think. The more proactive we are, the better it's going to be. But this is hard because we're so tuned into asking questions because it works with a healthy brain. Yes, we want the healthy brain to think. That works. Okay. I get to ask you some questions now. What's the most surprising thing you learned today about dementia symptoms? Yes.
Can't stop, fix, or change it.
You can't stop, fix, or change that. We want to. But you know what? When we do that, we tend to make it worse. We don't want them to think about this. We have to do all the thinking. And we have to ask for help because it's pretty lonely, isn't it? When we're doing this all on our own, we have to ask for help. That's why it's so important to get the family dementia aware and the professionals dementia aware and the doctors dementia aware and everybody needs to be dementia aware because that's when it really starts to be less invasive on us as the caregiver, less impactful. It's still hard. I'm not Pollyanna saying this is easy, but it just makes it a little bit easier to carry the burden. Make sense? Yeah?
The one thing is, I was always thinking that my husband needed to have a choice to make him feel like I would feel,
Yes.
but learning no options. And I'm going, oh, okay, that makes it a lot easier.
Because you're thinking with a healthy brain and how that makes you feel with a healthy brain, but his brain's not working the same anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah, I get a lot of pushback from families. They'll say, oh no, I have to ask Mom a question. She'll know. And I say, I bet you she won't.
Yeah, exactly.
I have never, when I've gone in and done this and helped families, I've never had an individual with dementia symptoms saying, why aren't you asking me questions? They don't ask. They don't miss it, I promise you. Because when you ask them a question, it's hard. When you don't, it's easy. You know? Yes.
You asked what we've learned. Living in the moment.
Yes.
I didn't realize that they can't think of the future.
Right.
They can remember the past maybe for the time, but that'll eventually go.
Exactly.
They're only living in that moment.
Yep.
And that was kind of revealing for me because, again, you want to talk to them, you want to give them information.
Yes.
You want them to
You want them to think.
to participate in
Yes.
their treatment to some
Yes.
extent, and they can't because
It
they're
scares
not even
them.
realizing what is wrong with them.
Exactly.
They're only thinking of what's happening to them.
The
that very
only
moment.
feeling what's happening right now.
Yeah.
And yes.
Yeah, that's the thing I learned was tapping into feeling and not thinking. So always be cognizant of what they're feeling from moment to moment rather than.
Yes, absolutely. And when I get pushback from families, I tell them this. I try and practice this all the time because it's hard. So even when I go out, my husband, he laughs at me because I'm always trying to be dementia aware, even with healthy brains. So, for example, when I'm getting on an airplane, I travel a lot. That flight attendant standing here, you step onto the plane and you turn here and you're going down the aisle and the flight attendant's standing there welcoming you. I like to say this, just because I like to see how a healthy brain likes this too. I say, thank you for assisting us today. I feel much safer. And they always go, oh, you're welcome. Then when they come down the aisle and they're taking the order, before I give them my order, I would say, you're really good at your job. And they go, oh, thank you. Well, thank you. Guess what I get? Extra snacks, stuff like that. Hey, it works on a healthy brain. When I was first doing this, my book first came out, my husband and I, we were kind of new in our relationship. He says, I want to come see you do a presentation. So we drove there together. He's sitting in the back, and he was really, really concentrating, listening. We got back in the car, and I said, what do you think? He said, I think you use this on me. And I said, yes, I do, and it works. What's that old adage about a spoonful of sugar, or what attracts flies, honey or vinegar? Hey, guess what? This works as well because it's all about how you're making people feel. Waitress comes to my table. I like to say this. You know what? We're so grateful you're helping us today. I think you're the best server here. What do you think they say? Do you think I get a little better service? Yeah, it works almost as well as a good tip. I'm telling you. Okay, so that's what I want you to understand. And it does take practice. Every time I ask a question, I'm always thinking, how can I use this information without asking a question? So when I'm doing staff trainings, especially if it's a smaller group, I start with this. You know, I'd really like to get to know you a little better. So if you could you share your name and how long you've worked here? And share with me your deepest, darkest secret, something you really want to learn about dementia. You know, I get a lot of information, and I didn't ask a question, did I? I did, but I put it in a positive way. Share with me, not what's your name, right? So we get better at that on connecting on the feelings. You know, I'm really interested in you. Connect with the feelings, okay? All right, thanks for that. Any other comment? Yes?
I'm thinking I'm gonna be learning something I can use the rest of my life right now.
Yes?
Instead of telling my mom that 26 is under G on the bingo card 37 times when it's called out, what should I do? We shouldn't be playing bingo, right?
Well, you can play bingo, but what I want you to do is be the answer that makes her feel good. Mom, look, we've got it. We've got it. Yes. Oh, you're so good at this.
So team up on bingo, not team
Yes.
bingo.
Think for her. Yes. Think for her. I go into assisted living all the time, and the activity directors will say, well, I have to ask questions. I say, no, you don't. What if it's a trivia game? So on the screen it says, how much did a loaf of bread cost in 1939? Well, what I've seen is that there will be 10 people in a semicircle, residents, in dementia care. One of them was able to answer that question because they can still process that. They have other laws, but they'll answer the question. So one person is constantly answering the question. What are the other people doing? Because they can't process it. So I said, you have to get everyone involved. Everyone's going to be a winner. So you don't ask the question like that. You say, oh, that's interesting. You know what? Someone will say, 39 cents. And you go, you know what? She thought 39 cents was good. That sounds good. I think that's a good answer. Yeah, so I just made her winner too, right? Yeah, she's involved and she's going, yeah, right. Mm-hmm, that feels good, sure. Mm-hmm. So we just think for them. So bingo can be fun. You're just going to play it together. The answer's always going to make them feel good. Oh, we don't have that one. I can't wait for the next one. I'm sure we're going to win. Right?
Laura, would you recommend not playing trivia in a nursing home?
They better be dementia aware if they're doing it. Really. Right? because I recommend that they don't ask questions anyway. So there are other dementia-aware games that can make everybody feel like they can do it. And that's just giving them the answer so they don't have to think for it. Yeah. Yeah. But they have to be taught to be dementia-aware, and we have to get everybody on this page for it to work. Yeah. Okay.
I can see a correlation teaching young children and using that same authentic, how does it make me feel while I'm learning this?
Exactly.
So if you can teach children, giving them a real sense of it feeling good to learn.
Purpose and meaning.
It's going to cement it better in their brain.
That's why Montessori works so well, because that's what they've learned, right? You know, I teach first responders too. Why do first responders need to know this? Okay, so your loved one's living in assisted living and they fall. It is protocol to ask for them to be checked out in case they hit their head. Good idea. But when you call 911, if they're not dementia aware, in come 5 big guys with equipment, and what's the first thing they do?
Ask questions.
Yes. Did you fall? Do you want to go to the hospital? What are you going to get from that? So then I teach them to come in a different way, and Jeff knows this so well because he has been in the business. One person comes in, the rest of them are kind of waiting to see if they're needed, sits down on the floor and says, looks like you're having a bad day today. I'm so glad I'm here to help you. What a difference. Yeah. So everybody needs this.
How they perceive it. You know, my mother asked me the first time, have you seen your dad lately? And I said, the first time I said, well, you know, he passed away.
How does that make her feel? Oh.
Right?
Yeah.
And every time after that, and she would ask me often, I haven't seen your dad today, have you? And I said, no, I haven't either. And it was
And we can talk to the feelings. No, and you know, I miss him. It's okay. I miss him. I bet you miss him.
Yeah, but
it answers the question for them in the moment. Do they store that? What do they do later? Ask again. But we give them the answer that makes them feel good.
I have a question about in the moment again. There are times when your loved one will be angry at whatever situation he's in, and angry at you because he's not understanding.
Something's triggering that feeling.
I figured out I probably do a lot of things wrong.
Yeah.
How do you address that anger?
Join the feelings. So if you were angry at me,
redirect that feeling.
You don't have to redirect it. You're going to join them. So if you were angry at me and you were yelling at me, I'd probably say this. You know, I get angry sometimes too. You know what? Doggone it. Let's just be angry together.
Oh, okay. You share their feelings.
Yes, we join them.
Because it's hard as
It's
a
real.
caregiver. You get angry that you're being attacked when you're doing everything you can, and that hurts your feelings, and you don't want to acknowledge your
Right,
feelings.
right.
So how does that first responder ask that person on the floor if they feel that they hurt their head?
We don't. We do what we call, we do an assessment. You know, it looks like maybe you hit your head. Wow. Sometimes when you hit your head, you might have some pain right here, right? You might have some pain. And sometimes we can't get them to answer, so we have to take them in. We have to get them checked out because there's that danger that they did hit their head. But the way we do that is, I'm a little bit worried that you may have hit your head, and I've got this great, knowledgeable person that's going to help us check this out. I'm so glad we can go together, and you're just moving them. You're not asking them. You're getting them on that. You're getting, I have some people that can help me, and we're going to go get this checked out, but I'm right here with you. Right? And they'll still resist, but if they know that you're there to help them and you're talking to those feelings and allowing them to be scared, that's what works the best. Not, we're going to go to the hospital and they're going to ask you a bunch of questions. Then what happens, Jeff, if they come into the emergency room or ask them a bunch of questions, what are they going to do?
Say no.
they're gonna freak out. So we have to learn in the emergency room how to get that information without asking all these questions. We ask the caregivers if we can. We ask the people around them. We ask someone who may have witnessed the situation. And then we take, our knowledge of how to assess the situation physically. But what do you think they're going to tell us if you say, what's your pain level? 1 to 10.
Yeah.
You have to watch them and see how they're reacting. You can see pain on somebody, right, Jeff? Yeah. That's what we have to learn all together. And the first thing that medical community has been taught to do is when that person is anxious is to do what? Medicate them.
Restrain them.
Or restrain them, which makes it worse. So what do you think what works better, Jeff, rather than restraining them or medicating them right away?
Comforting, positive connection.
Yes. 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 I know you're scared. I'm scared too. I'm glad we can be in here so we can be scared together. We're going to figure this out together. It's okay to be scared. It's okay. We're all scared. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Thank you.
Yeah.
What happens for our mental health when we see our loved one declining? We don't like it.
We don't like it, and we need to be in a place where it's safe, an emotional place where we can fall and feel safe. Just like right now, it's okay that you don't like it. I'm not going to be Pollyanna and tell you this is not hard, but I know that we can get through this together.
Laura,
Yes.
could I respond to that?
Sure.
What I did? So, this has been an ongoing process for me for the last 14 of our almost 44 years. And I knew what was going on. But what was happening is my husband's dementia was here and I was down here, but I started seeing Medicare pays for it, a mental health therapist who specializes in dementia caregivers relationships. And she has saved me. And so I took time off for 3 full days. I came back. Now I'm up here and the dementia's right here.
And what you're doing right now,
Yeah.
that empowerment, that understanding, that gives you hope. That gives you a less of a feeling of helplessness. I mean, you know that this is hard and that it's hard for everybody, but you're not alone. You're not alone. We are learning to be such a better village for you. Yes. So you get a big gold star. I wish I had those gold star sheets that our teachers used to have. Anybody remember that? I'd put it right on your forehead. Doggone it. Yes. Anyone else?
I was going to say the hostess facade and going into the doctor's office and having them do the cognitive test, that was so frustrating for me.
Yes.
Because I knew the truth,
Yep.
yet she was able to say the right answer.
Exactly. And that's why I want you to go in with confidence. And you've got this journal and you're going, okay, yes, that's how she sees it. That's one way to see it. This is how I see it. This is what I'm seeing. She's not able to see it in the same way, and that's okay. We're going to give her that permission. But the doctor needs to know this is really what's happening, right? Yeah, it's okay. Let her feel upset about that too, because she's going to be mad at you. But you're going to say, oh, I understand, Mom. That didn't feel very good. Let's go have lunch, right?
And this is kind of controversial, but if we feel ourselves approaching this stage of our life,
Uh-huh.
what are our options?
I want you to get into a medical community, a medical team like Marshall, that's going to really walk this with you and understand that at this point, the medical community doesn't have any way to stop it, fix it, or change it, but the more you know about it, the more we can learn together on how to better manage it. So just basically becoming dementia aware. I'm writing the 4th edition of this book, and it's going to have a lot of medical information in it to what we talked about today. But I have one chapter, it's called If I Get Dementia Symptoms, What Do I Want the World to Know? Because I'm working with a very wonderful friend of mine, great guy that he took care of his mom through the whole dementia journey until she passed away, but now he's beginning to have dementia symptoms. And so his whole journey, and so he used my book as a Bible to care for his mom. And so he said, this needs to be in your book from my perspective about what's happening when this fog starts to come over my brain. What do I want my kids to know? So yes, start writing that down. What if you feel like you may need this kind of care, you're feeling this, you want to write, this is what I want you to know, right? You know, I have this fear that, of course, I'm high risk because my dad had Alzheimer's. I'm high risk that I'm going to have it. I have this fear that I'm going to try and get into one of these communities and they're going to go, oh, no, we're not taking the Dementia Whisperer because she's going to be going, I know you're not dementia. Where? I'm going to know what they're doing, right? So we want the world to know this so that they can better help us.
You don't always want it. Excuse me, help.
No, you don't. That's why you need to be, that's why you want to be saying to yourself, if I get dementia symptoms, this is what I'm going to want, and I'm not going to know I'm going to want it when I get them. Do you see that, that perspective? Yeah.
Is there a benefit to knowing which type of dementia? I mean,
yes, because there's all these different causes, and they cause different dementia symptoms. So in order to customize the care approach, it's helpful to know what kinds of symptoms we're probably going to see.
Okay.
Yeah.
But not actual treatment.
No, there's no, well, a stroke, there's treatment for a stroke.
No, I was thinking more like the Lewy body.
Yeah, Lewy body. And what we say in the business is if it talks like Alzheimer's, but it walks like Parkinson's, it's probably Lewy body. Because all of these symptoms go all over the place, right? So, but knowing that, we can kind of have a roadmap about what we're probably going to see. So, but it's so different with everybody.
What is the Lewy body?
Lewy body disease is a disease that attacks the brain in a common way that Parkinson's does and Alzheimer's does. So you see similar symptoms from both. So they'll have physical symptoms and these cognitive symptoms, but Alzheimer's, generally speaking, doesn't have the physical symptoms that Parkinson's has. But Lewy body has both of them. It's just weird. But that's kind of common because you might have, your loved one might have Lewy body and have totally different symptoms. So
I've never heard that word.
Lewy body is just a different disease. It's actually, Alzheimer's is the leading cause. Parkinson's is the second leading cause, and Lewy body is the third leading cause. Isn't that interesting?
And frontal temporal.
And frontal temporal is the fourth leading cause.
What about accident?
Traumatic brain injury is like 5th or 6th on the list, I think, after vascular, I think. But it changes every year, too. It's crazy.
So I'm confused about Parkinson's.
Yes.
Could you have Parkinson's but not have dementia?
No, you always, any symptom that you have that's a dementia symptom can be a symptom caused by Parkinson's. So if you have Parkinson's, you have executive brain function loss, which is going to show itself in dementia symptoms. Yeah. At some point. But no, always. Because tremors is a symptom. Falling is a symptom. Hallucinations is a symptom. What happens is you have the symptoms before they realize what's causing it. That's why it's so confusing. So they don't call it dementia, but it is dementia symptoms. Those are all dementia symptoms. They're just different symptoms because of the cause.
So if you have dementia, that doesn't mean you have Alzheimer's.
If you have dementia symptoms, that doesn't necessarily mean it's caused by Alzheimer's. It could be caused by any of these other 100 causes. See, people have this upside down. I hear from family members, they'll say, Well, my wife has dementia symptoms, but it hasn't turned into Alzheimer's yet. That's upside down. If she has dementia symptoms, something is causing it. Now, Alzheimer's is the leading cause, so it very well could be that, but it also could be Parkinson's. If they have dementia symptoms, something is causing that. We just don't always know the cause, but we know it's always dementia. But you can't have dementia. That's an incomplete sentence. You have dementia symptoms caused by A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Okay? Does that make sense? Did that help you? Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. I know it's hard to think of that. Okay, we are out of time. I have my books available. They're $20. They're autographed books today, or you can go on any of the major booksellers, Amazon. It's a bestseller. It's the 3rd edition, A Loving Approach to Dementia Care. I have bookmarkers, and I have information about my Dementia Lifeboat, which is a support group online. It's a podcast support group online. We have poolside chats every 2nd and 4th Tuesday evenings where professional caregivers, family caregivers, experts come on. Last Tuesday, we talked about veterans benefits for caregivers. This next Tuesday, we're talking about the power of gratitude and having a grateful heart, even when it's difficult as a caregiver. So I have my co-pilot, Jocelyn, who is also a caregiver life coach, who is on next to me, and you are welcome. And the benefit of being on the lifeboat, and there, like I said, there's information on the table for this, is that we record everything. So you can, once you're in the lifeboat as a member, you can go and watch these poolside chats if you can't be involved. But it's open mic. So I have, I'm interviewing experts, but the caregivers that are on can also ask questions in real time.
So you would suggest Marshall is a resource?
Absolutely. Marshall is a huge resource. They have a dementia care navigator who is really in touch with all the resources in this area. You want to stand up and introduce yourself?
My name's Rachel Marti. I work at our Community Care Network program. I've been a resource specialist there for 2 years, so I'm really knowledgeable of what's available in El Dorado County for patients or their family or caregivers. I'm hoping in the next couple of weeks we'll have the program going, and it will just consist of people reaching out, email or calls, and I can provide them with folders with resources or even recommend some things that someone might be specifically looking for. And then there'll be the folders to hand out to family or the patients with some contents inside just to kind of start looking what's in the community.
All right, thank you. It's amazing, amazing resources. We need this around the world. Thank you to Marshall. Okay, thank you everyone. Go forth and make the world dementia aware.